Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session for September 5th, 2020. And today, this is budget presentations for the next hour and 45 minutes, I believe. And I'm John Hutchings, the chair of the board. Also present as vice chair, Commissioner Ty Menser, County Manager Ramiro Chavez, and I see Commissioner Gary Edwards coming in. We have Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, and we've got Denise Doty, Patty Rosetto, and Olivia Oudman. And so thank you all for joining us. And turning it over to going right to Robin, or to you, Ramiro?
At this point, I'll give it to Robin. I believe you have a book in front of you that's going to walk you. This is going to be serve you as a informational as you go through and listening to all the different presentations to all the offices and departments. As a reminder, as you may recall, the staff suggested that perhaps when you hear the individual policy requests by individual offices and departments, for you to start ranking high, medium, and low. And at the end of those presentations, the staff will ask for those ratings, and later on we'll come back and give you the overall. And again, this is just your first assessment individually as to the merits of the information that we'll be receiving in the next 2 weeks.
All right.
Okay, good morning, commissioners, and welcome to the first of 2 weeks of budget presentations. In your binder, under tab 1, you have the schedule for this week's presentations. This morning, we'll orient you to the binder, and we will also then take a look at the most recent forecast and forecast model. And so I'm going to turn to the assessors to use as the orientation. So that's tab 3. So if you'll turn to tab 3 in your binder, the first page, it's folded over, is the list of the assessor's policy level requests. This is the sheet of paper that I'm going to ask you to take out of your binder and to rank the high, medium, low as you listen to the assessor explain his need for each of the items that he asked for. So this is the page that I'll be collecting from you at the end of each session, is that first page. The next thing you see is there's tabs across the top as well as the numbered tabs across the bottom. These tabs are color-coded and also marked. B, the blue tab, B, is the budget pages. These are the pages that each office or department prepared for the budget book, and you see their org chart, a discussion of their goals, and what their upcoming challenges are in this year. The next item under P, the red tab, is the presentation. So if you look at that for the assessor, this is the presentation that he'll be going over when he meets with you this afternoon. Each presentation, I asked them to all be pretty much the same. I'm sure that some of them took some liberties with pages, but you should be able to find the same information in each of the presentations. An overview of the office and what they do, a financial worksheet that shows last year's actual expenditures, this year's estimated expenditures, and next year's proposed budget, and then any funds that that office or department manages. You'll see for 2021, their beginning fund balance, revenue, expenditures, and ending fund balance. The next item in the PowerPoint should be what challenges the officer department is facing for the coming year. And then you'll see their policy level proposals. And what you should hear in the conversation is how what each officer department asked for addresses their challenges in their officer department. Tab F is the financial plan. Each officer department was asked to submit a copy of the financial plan. Now, most of the financial plans, I think, are going to look like the ones that we usually review that you're accustomed to. I see this one from the assessor is a little different. So usually, though, you should see a financial plan where you will be able to assess incoming revenues, outgoing expenditures, and fund balance over time. And I see that what the assessor submitted is not quite that, but there we have it. It is what it is. So that's what's in the binders. Patty, Olivia, or Denise, do you have anything to add? Yes, Denise.
I would just add that as you look at the first sheets, which are the policy level requests, you will find that we had some major difficulties with the footers on the page numbers. And so I'd just say on all of these, they have line numbers, and those are the things we need to focus on, because sometimes the same page number shows up on every single page. And quite simply, there wasn't anything we could do about it. It was just Excel. So my apologies, but we tried.
And I just wanted to add in, Robin, those sheets that you asked Amy to print, she did. She just tucked them in tab 2 with the overview and other charts. So that's what you're looking for.
Cool.
So which one, Olivia, which one?
Tab 2 is going to be Robin's presentation. When I was in the office and I told her she could put it in there so no one lost it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't see them in my book, so that's okay.
Any questions so far, Gary or Ty?
The only one I just happened to notice on page 3 of the assessors, 2019, 2020, 2021. I take it there's just some commas missing there on that budgetary amount. Is that right?
I would guess that is the case.
Oh,
A lack of commas. It makes the numbers a little hard to read, but
no, but everything else is right on that. Okay. I'm just wondering about the $1 million difference or 800,000.
well, that'll be something you can ask the assessor about this afternoon.
I have a question. When you went over the policy requests high level week or two ago, we had these big sheets. Sounds like these have been put into at the front of each department's tab. Have there been any changes to, because I made notes on the old ones and I was kind of hoping to work from my older versions. Have there been changes to them?
So
Or could I-
yes, as we've worked through the numbers, we gave you that what you saw in the past was very preliminary. We've been working with offices and departments to refine what's in the system. So there have been some changes, but
That's all I need to know. Cross-reference it, I will do.
yeah.
Okay.
Not a lot.
Any other questions about the binder?
Pretty self-explanatory.
It is.
Easily laid out. Thank you.
And it'll get easier as we go because we tried to keep it in exactly the same order and format throughout the binder to try to facilitate, we're all in different places now. It used to be in the room we could help you find things, and now you're kind of on your own. So we tried to look for ways to make it easy.
Well, we appreciate it.
Okay, well, we'll see how well we did as the weeks go on. So let's jump into the forecast, and it sounds like under tab 2, you'll have a copy of the latest forecast. I'm going to share my screen. Open the workbook. So hopefully you are going to find 2 pages. One is the graph that we're all becoming familiar with, and the other is the forecast table that goes along with it, and that would look like this. So what I'm going to do this morning is walk through 2020 and 2021 as it exists today in the system. And that's what you have on the printed copy, is what is currently in the budget system. Then we'll talk about where that can change. For example, we looked at sales tax just last week. The numbers for sales tax in the system right now are what I knew or thought I knew in July, and those need to be updated. So we'll see how that can change. Then we'll take a look at where that leaves the graph in terms of future fund balance, and talk about what the opportunities might be as we look at policy level changes, and how that would affect ending fund balance in the future. So that'll be the rest of this morning. Then you'll have a break for lunch and other business, and then we'll come back this afternoon and launch into presentations. Okay, so the forecast as it stands today. The 2020 column, which is the one in green or highlighted on the page, to try to make this a little bigger on the screen. This is the most recent estimate for sales tax. And what we have here, as we saw last week when you looked at sales tax, is year to date, we are running 1.9% above forecast. The forecast had been a little over 20 million. So if we estimate that through the end of this year, we collect about 2% above the forecast, which is where we're at today, and probably not unreasonable unless we truly see the changes that had been projected by the economists. We should collect about 20.4 million in sales tax. The amount of property tax hasn't changed. If property tax is estimated to be less than what we've been seeing, what we're seeing come in is about 97% of the budgeted amount. If that changes, we'll see the change next month or this month. We're in October. I can't believe it's October already, but we'll see that change toward the end of this month, and you'll get an updated forecast at the end of the month. So property tax hasn't changed since the last estimate. I've increased the sales tax. Other revenue really hasn't changed. And then you see the adjustments that were made in the budget adjustment. So here's budget amendment number 3, which was a standard change that we did in the spring. Budgeted number 4, reductions. decreased revenue slightly, and then the amendment number 4 adds for COVID-19 funding, all brings us to estimated revenue this year of just over $110 million. Any questions about revenue? Nope. I don't hear any questions, so I'm going to keep going. This is this year. This could be a quick morning session. So moving on to expenditures. Here's the expenditure base. This takes into account the second quarter estimates from the offices and departments. We're working on updating that. So very soon I'll have the updated number to put in here. That includes any reversions that the offices and departments are anticipating. Here's amendment number 3, an increase of just over $1 million. Here's amendment number 4, the budget reduction that the board authorized, and the amendment number 4 adds for COVID-19 relief. It's the same as the revenue. So we're anticipating expenditures this year of $111,510,000. That's the current estimated expenditures. That will give us an ending fund balance of just over $19 million for this year. And when you look at the graph, here it is, just a little less than what we saw as the beginning fund balance for this year. So, any questions so far on this year's estimate?
I don't have any questions. I'm waiting to hear if the other commissioners do.
I do not.
No.
Okay, we'll keep going. 2021 and 2022. Now you're only going to adopt a budget for 2021, but we have the information in the system for 2022. So I went ahead and put that into the forecast. That's what from offices and departments and what they were estimating at the time the budget was built. It's a good place to start for forecasting out into the future. And as we've discussed, you're only going to adopt a budget for next year, but you should look into future years to see how you're impacting fund balance at the time you make decisions. So you've got one additional year here beyond what you're going to actually budget for. 21 and 22 reflect what's actually in Questica right now, Questica being the budget system. So here's the beginning fund balance carries forward. Property tax of $44 million. This is the estimate based on a 1% growth. Should you decide to not do a statement of substantial need, then this number would come down by about $180,000. But the number reflects the new construction is reported by the assessor plus the 1% growth. The other thing that's not factored in here, as we've discussed, is we never actually collect the full amount of the property tax that's levied. We have to show the full amount in the budget because you cannot levy more than is in the preliminary 2 budget that is published in November. So we know right now that we are not going to collect the full $44 million in property tax. It's going to be a little less. How much less? Less is going to be 98, 99% of this 44 million. But we know that this is the maximum that might come in next year.
Robin?
Yes.
So the 44 million in 2021 for property tax, that's with the assumption of the 1%. Is it the same then, an additional 1% in 2022?
Yes, 2022 is an additional 1% plus additional money for new construction.
Okay, thank you.
Robin, I have a question on that.
Yes.
I thought we were talking about 0.6% instead of 1% for the property tax.
Yes, Commissioner Edwards, that is the legal maximum if the board does not pass a resolution of substantial need, which is why I said that should you decide to go in that direction, this number will be reduced by about $180,000.
Okay.
And what I'm showing you today on this table, it is what is actually in the budget system. The IPD less than 1% is new information. So we'd want to adjust the system for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to sales tax. For sales tax, when I estimated the amount in July, all of the indicators were pointing to a pretty significant reduction in sales tax. So the sales tax that's currently in the system is $18,125,000. That needs to be increased. At a minimum, I think that, again, unless everything actually takes the dive, instead of increasing, I think we could increase this number to at least 2% above the amount that we think we're going to collect in 2020. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now on this page. I also think that in 2022, we're going to see a continued growth in the economy. Even if we do take another dip, I think that the recovery is going to be strong in 2022. So I'm going to estimate sales tax in 2022 at a 5% growth rate. I've got to actually do my math right, or it'll give us something weird. So I've now adjusted sales tax. And when we look at the graph, just adjusting the sales tax revenue brings you up in 2021 to a fund balance that's just above $10 million. But 2022 is still pretty compromised and low, much lower than you want it to be. So adjusting the sales tax improves 2021 and 2022, but not by enough, I would say.
I have a question on that.
Go ahead.
I guess I'm trying to figure out what you're basing your projections on, because I think a lot of it's going to have to do with the national election scene. And I don't think we're going to know that for another month. And then we might have a better picture of what's coming.
I agree with you, Commissioner. As time goes on, we're going to have a much better picture. But we have to make some assumptions now for you to be able to continue the work that needs to be done. And I'm basing my assumptions, since we don't have a new forecast from the state yet, I'm basing my assumptions on recovery from the Great Recession. And we may do better and we may do worse. But if you've got better assumptions. This is part of why I'm talking all this through. If you have assumptions you think I should be using, let's talk about that.
Well, I guess one of the big things is if we're going to compare ourselves to the state, we've got that Boeing deal. And that is going to be a killer from a state budget perspective. I don't know exactly the spin-off that it's going to have on the locals, but it's a big hit. And I can tell you that the state budget projection people are, really worried about it. I'm hoping you're staying in touch with those folks.
Right. So I'm not using state numbers right now, though, because I don't think that we've seen in the data that Thurston County is faring better than major parts of the state.
Yes. Okay.
Commissioner Menser, I see your hand up.
Thank you. If I studied this sheet a little longer, I might be able to answer this question, but I'm hoping you can just answer it more efficiently. What is so with the adjustments to the tax numbers that you just made, and they're looking pretty stable from those two categories, what is it that's driving the fund balance down from 19 to 10 to 3 over the next 2 years? What is the driver?
It is the expenditure side. So if you look at revenues, even with the tax numbers staying steady, what offices and departments have estimated is other revenue, and that these are revenue other than property tax and sales tax. So all the other taxes, the grants, the fees that we collect that go into the general fund, those are all anticipated to drop by about $3 million, you see here. So that brings our revenue down pretty substantially. Then the other thing that's driving it is the expenditure side. So you see total revenue of about 103.5 million and total expenditures of 112.5 million. So we're spending substantially more should the board approve the budget as proposed than we have in revenue. And that's where the real discussion's going to come in, because the question is, you've got $6 million in requests at policy level for spending ads, and you can't afford it. You could do that for next year. You could grant the full 6 million, but then you'd be in instant cut mode in 2022 unless revenues just went up substantially in an unanticipated fashion. You also have a cost of living increase that you're bound to in your contracts unless you direct our contract negotiator to go to the table and try to bargain the COLA. But we are bound to a COLA that's a minimum, the CPI or a minimum amount. And the minimum, I want to say, is 1.5%. I'd have to check with Debbie.
Yeah, it is 1.5.
Yeah. So the minimum COLA is going to be about 700,000 next year and just a little more in the year after that. That's if inflation doesn't go above 1.5% based on the CPI. So the real drivers here are the level of expenditures.
It looks like, just go back at revenue, it looks like a big chunk, though, is revenue dropping from 110 to 103, but that's different. Is that misleading because of coronavirus funds that came in this year or something like that? I mean, the numbers are about the same. Then you've got the amendment number 4 add 6 million, which is not there for 2021. And so the revenue drop seems like the bigger part of it. And just looking at that, because the expenditures are going up by $1 million,
Right.
only $1 million,
Only $1 million. Because
only $1 million, but revenue drops by 7.5 million or 6.5 million.
that's right. The adjustment to take out the coronavirus spending is embedded in this maintenance level number. So it comes out at the same way it comes out of the revenue. It came out here, and it came out here.
Oh, I see. But then you've got the assumption that we're adding in all the policy level requests.
These are the policy level requests. Right.
So this forecast, so this, just so I'm clear, and it wasn't clear to me until just 2 seconds ago. So this forecast, which is kind of dire in a sense, dropping us, down to 3 million by 2022, is assuming that we grant 100% of the policy level requests, which obviously we're not going to be able to do.
Right. That's exactly right. And what this forecast picture presented to you was, here's what's in the system. This is what offices and departments asked for. And it's a demonstration, if you will, of why you can't just tell the offices and departments, go for it. Here's everything you want. You're not able to do that unless you want to take the risk about the fund balance in 2022 and go into a cut mode in the future. So I wanted to show you exactly what everyone had asked for. And that's what this picture is. So really the conversation becomes, at this point, I think that the revenue, the property tax won't be quite this much. It'll actually be somewhat less. Sales tax might be a little more. It might be less, as Commissioner Edwards points out. We really don't know. We're making our best assumptions at this time. The other revenues are what offices and departments think that they will generate in fees, fines, other types of taxes. So that's less than this year. It also takes into consideration that the COVID funding is coming out. And so I feel pretty good about the revenue. What I'm suggesting the board should discuss at this point is what you want the target to be for your fund balance in 2022. Do you want it to be up at the 10 million mark, or something above, or something below? Because that's what's going to determine how much you spend. And we'll update the forecast at least one more time before I ask you to make budget decisions in November. But if you have a sense, an agreement of where you want to target 2022, then we'll know how much you can spend for 2021.
So, Robin, with the, if we were, or when we decide what that goal will be for an ending fund balance, if, for example, the sake of argument, we said $10 million, do you know upfront all the policy requests, what those total?
Yes, we know that the policy requests for 2021 total $6,091,000.
Million. Okay.
And the requests in 2022 total $5,791,000. That's carrying forward 2021.
And what was it for 22?
Carrying forward 2021 comes to $5,791,000. It's on your page.
Okay.
It's these two numbers right here.
Oh, yeah, right there. Okay, thank you. Got it. Thank you. Okay, when do you want us to decide and discuss that ending fund balance? What we've
I would
kind of like.
suggest that you have that discussion now.
Okay. Any initial thoughts, Gary or Ty, on establishing what level? the fund balance is?
If I had to just take a shot at it, my concern would be that we shoot for the ability to make payroll, and I don't know if we ought to get, at this point, I don't think we ought to get that encouraged about it until we look at the national election scene and how that comes out. That's going to be a month from now. Because otherwise,
So
we're going to have to redo everything.
So are you suggesting wait until after the election to even establish the ending fund balance?
No,
goal?
I'm saying let's make sure that we have enough to make payroll. I'm not so sure we're going to be able to do any enhancements to service as we move forward. I think we'll be fortunate if we can kind of continue our existing service.
Maintenance level. Okay.
So let's take a look and see what it looks like if you did no policy and only funded maintenance level plus the COLAs. I think that you've got a little room for some policy level funding. That's if you did nothing.
And if I may relate to that, commissioners, remember when you had a meeting with elected officials, they suggested before you entertain any additional expenditures, you may consider reestablishing or the budget cuts that you implemented under Amendment Number 4. So that is also an option for you. And at that point, if you restore the budget cuts under Amendment Number 4, then you give the latitude to offices and departments to determine how they would like to direct the additional expenditures on that.
Right.
So in a way, you made them whole, and that is an option. I believe that's what Robin put it on in front of you.
Right.
Okay.
So here's if we restored the $2.9 million in each year, it would look like this.
All right.
And that's certainly a question you could ask each of the officials when they're presenting their budgets to you over the course of the next 2 weeks is, you know, if we just restored your budget cuts, how's that sound? Or, you know, ask what their opinion is on that.
Robin, I have a question, please.
Yes.
On expenditures, 111 million, is that basically because of the CARES money that we put in and ran through there on the ads?
Right.
Yeah, that is the huge leap. We've added over 6 million in CARES expenditures, COVID response.
See, my view is on this reinstating that budget cut, you know where I'm at on that. I've been pushing, I've been adamant about that all along, and then let's move forward, so.
Commissioner Menser, anything? Any thoughts?
How?
No, hang on.
Oh,
Go ahead, Ty.
okay.
So reinstating the 2.9 million puts 2022 is what Robin is showing us right now, right?
Right.
And
Continue.
well, I don't think that I feel comfortable going. I mean, the one thing I've learned in the last 2 years is kind of how I don't mean to use this word. I can't think of a better word than squirrely. That some of the projection is with, because you're guesstimating revenues, and there's nothing. It's not critical of anybody. It's just the way the process works that I didn't quite have a perfect handle on until I got here and saw kind of exactly how it worked. So putting the fund balance at a projection of 10 million, even that is taking a big risk because it might come in less than that. And then what are you going to do? Then you're in immediate, as you say, you're in immediate cut mode and stuff like that. So even this is beyond what I would consider an acceptable risk. Even if 2022 is at that black line, that's a significant risk from my perspective. I'm also not sure what value, I mean, I understand that presidential elections and policies change economic health, but I'm not sure what that's going to mean. You don't know how it's going to turn out. And I'm not sure what November's election is going to tell us about where the economy is going. I mean, the economy has flourished under President Obama and President Clinton a lot more than it flourished under any Republican administration. So I guess the theory is if Biden wins, it's going to be a bit stronger economy in 2021. I don't know if that's what Commissioner Edwards is suggesting. So I'm not sure what waiting around for November is going to do for us. I think we're going to have to make these decisions with the information we have. Because our decisions are due in November, and we'll get a little more information between now and then, but not a ton. So I guess the answer to your question is, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to if offices and departments want to have most or all of the 2020 cuts back as their preferred way of going about it, I'm happy to hear that. I mean, I'm happy to take that information in and discuss it with my seatmates. But that's putting us perilously close to my comfort level.
So I just reduced the 2.9 million to 2.5 because I think there was approximately $500,000 that came out of non-departmental that you would not need to restore.
Robin, I have another question, please.
Yes, Commissioner.
Under 2021, under 2020, we got total expenditures of 111,510, and then on 2021, we're starting off with that as just expenditures, that same number, and I'm trying to figure that out.
Your starting point is almost always your ending point from the prior year, and it's adjusted in maintenance level.
I know, but we're not going to have that $6 million that we did on ads from CARES money.
Right, that's taken out in maintenance level.
Okay.
What numbers are you looking at?
I'm looking at 2020, then going into the expenditures on 2021.
On the chart, because you're looking at the chart and Robin just updated that chart.
Yeah, one's on expenditures and one is total expenditures. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, if she's updated it, I guess I'm too far away. Maybe I better go sit closer or something. That's good.
Make it a little bigger.
So Robin,
right.
when you had, just real quick, when you added the amendment, the budget reductions, and you added that back in, that brought the ending fund balance for 2021. Was it at 8 million or 9 million?
So if we add back in the reduction, except for what was taken out of non-departmental, if you leave non-departmental reduced, then your graph looks like this. You're getting really close to the $10 million mark in 2022. Now, again, you know, I appreciate that you all are getting the value of a forecast. You have to have something, but it is built on assumptions. And I think the word squirrely is just fine because we really don't know. We're taking our best guess. I'm trying to base that guess on something. So it's not just a guessing game, but it really is we don't know. A forecast is all about what you think might happen, and it's never 100% accurate. They just never are, and it'll change next week when I have some new bit of information. They change constantly. So could it be the revenue be more? It could. This other revenue might be low. We already know the property tax is a little bit high, and sales tax could come in at record increases and would be a lot more than what I've got here on the page. But conversely, property tax, if we really do see the impact of the pandemic, if we hit a significant second wave and businesses have to shut down again, that we know that's a risk. If we see that the impact of the first wave was simply delayed due to stimulus payments, increased unemployment payments, the other things, it takes a while for government to lay people off. We haven't seen the impact of the state furloughs. If all of that and the eviction moratorium and the utility, you can't take anyone off the utilities. If all of that expires, then what we might see is the impact to the economy that comes later on a delayed impact. So if all that happens, then both property tax and sales tax might be significantly less. So it could go either way.
I do have a comment on that. Hutch.
Yeah, go ahead.
If we're going to be in charge of our own destiny as we move forward here. If we continue to have inhibiting regulatory process in place that makes it very uncomfortable for businesses to succeed, for home builders to build, all of that type of thing, we could run into a problem. But short of that, if we would make adjustments on that, we're going to have a change in societal behavior having to do with this bubble that I've been talking about for the last several years now. And that has to do with the point of destination on purchases. People aren't going back to town to make retail purchases in bulk the way they were prior to the COVID issue. Now with people purchasing and getting a delivery benefit to the county, we end up in a lot better situation getting 100% of that local tax on that unincorporated delivery than 15% that we would get if it was purchased in a municipality. So the magnitude of change is substantial, and I don't believe that's going to let up. We're going to be in better shape than the municipalities are, for sure, any way you look at it, I think. And if you look at some of the counties that are in similar situations to us, it's going to be the same. The UPS trucks and such are going to be running around making deliveries, and that's going to keep us afloat at this time. If we want to do better than maintain services, all we need to do is ease up on the regulatory process that we've got in place. We're having a discussion, and that's my point of discussion, I guess.
So Robin, and when you took the Amendment 4 reduction from 2.9 down to 2.5, it raised the ending fund balance for 21 considerably higher than that. Why is that?
It comes up by about $1 million because you take $500,000 from 21 and leave it in the fund balance, becomes available in 22, and then there's the spending that you don't do in 22. So it jumped it up about $1 million.
Wow. Okay.
It's got a compounding effect.
Apparently. So I take it to about 9 million, or just over 9 million then.
Yeah, it's getting really close to the $10 million mark.
Okay.
If I heard Commissioner Mensah right, and please jump in if I didn't, it sounds like you would like it to be at least 10 million. So if we adjust these numbers somewhat, let's see where 2 million gets you a little over 10. So you could spend about $2 million in the coming budget deliberations.
2 million will get us just over 10.
Yep. Given the assumptions in revenue.
Right. And we will adjust all the way down the line until we approve the budget.
Right.
I mean, I've heard an argument to take a bigger risk on this than you might in any given other year, just based on the squirreliness of our numbers and the fact that, you know, let's take that risk, you know, because it could, we're dealing with a wider window. And so, I mean, I guess I'm in and around what you're saying. I mean, I think my arm could be twisted to go to the 2,500 and look at that. I think beyond that is going to be beyond what I could feel comfortable about, but I would engage in a discussion with my seatmates about where they're at. But I would say that's kind of my outer limit at this point.
It seems to me this is the chicken and the egg. We're trying to establish an ending fund balance, and a portion of that is going to be impacted by a reduction of or reinstatement of some of the budget cuts that we did, but we haven't gone through all the policy asks yet. Even though we know the total of the policy asks, we don't know what we're going to approve. So does the policy ask, our decisions on what will be approved and what doesn't is going to drive the ending fund, or is the ending fund going to drive our decisions as to what gets approved? That makes sense?
Yes, and I think that's an excellent question. I would reply to you that establishing a target for your ending fund balance is a best practice before you decide how much to spend, because that will encourage you to limit your spending choices and to do policy trade-offs on what is most important to the board. So you're paying attention to your target. Now, it's a target. It's not set in stone, and you could decide as a board, as you approve things, that you're comfortable going a little lower, or there's so many important things that you want to spend money on that you're willing to go a little lower. Or, you know, maybe there's not enough. And please don't get me wrong. Every ask that every office and department is bringing forward is important. It's all important. There's no frills. There's nothing that you'll see in the next 2 weeks that is not worth doing. So these are not going to be simple choices to bring 6 million in asks down to roughly 2.5 million in approved expenditures. But setting a target now is considered a best practice because it reinforces that need to prioritize how you spend the money.
I would also ask my seatmates that as we enter into an agreeable ending fund balance target, and we move into reducing the policy asks, which may be considerable, that we agree philosophically that we're not going to do anything that's going to harm our credit rating and start robbing from Peter to pay Paul as a stopgap. Does that make sense too?
Well, I have one issue I'd like to bring up.
Okay, hang on real quick. Is it about that? Because I want to ask if that, as we just were talking about budget cuts a few months ago, it was suggested we go into the negative and take from another fund, and then we can pay that fund back, interfund, and that I did not care for that at all.
Well, that's not what I do think we ought to give the 2% back that we took, and we're going to end up with an ending fund balance that's a little more substantial because of just the normal course of doing business. And then we'll have more accurate numbers to look at, in my estimation. But
yeah, you'll probably be able to put what I said in better words, Robin. That makes sense.
Yes, we don't want to, let's see. We don't want to borrow money to be able to make payroll. So what the proposal that I have heard is to dip below, our cash would go under zero twice a year potentially, while we wait for property taxes to come in, because our seasonality of our tax collection, and that during those, in the trough, if you will, of April and October, we would borrow money from another fund and then pay it right back. And what we talked to our bond advisors about that, and they agreed that would not be a good thing to do.
Right. I just want to hear a commitment from my seatmate that we won't go in that direction.
Robin?
Yes.
When someone fails to pay their property taxes on time, and then they do make their eventual property tax payment, don't we end up in a better situation due to late fees and interest being charged against that amount? So we actually end up with more revenue in the end than we do before that.
Right. We do collect penalties and interest, but let's see, Treasurer Gadman could tell you more about this. I think that there has been legislation in the past couple of years that relaxes the payments that people can pay over time before the penalties and interest kick in. And I can show you the trends in property tax penalties and interest has been going down.
Okay, I need to hear from my seatmates if they're on board with not risking our credit rating.
I don't think it'll be a risk to the credit rating if I think we can give the 2% back and we're still adequate based on the bubble.
I'm not talking about that. What are your thoughts, Ty?
What Commissioner Hutchins is stating, early in the year, we had a conversation with the treasurer as well as the finance committee, whether it makes sense to borrow from other funds to mitigate the gap of the short-term revenues. That was not advisable, and that will not be a good approach, since that could affect our credit rating down the road, because eventually we'll have to pay back with interest if we borrow from other funds. I guess what Commissioner Hutchins, if I may, is asking the board if you're agreeing on not to exercise that option.
Because that option was proffered instead of budget cuts to the offices. And we resisted. And I just want to hear a commitment that we're standing firm on that, not going to move away from that stance.
Well, I obviously don't think that we ought to be borrowing from other funds, because I don't think we're going to have to borrow from other funds if things keep going. If we would lighten up on regulatory process and allow people to do a few more things. We're going to have a lot more REIT money. We're going to have a lot of REIT money coming in from transfer of housing, and we're going to have a lot of new construction from building new housing. If we would get out of the way, we can protect the environment and we can get our economy going even better than what we're seeing right now. So no, I don't want to borrow from other funds. I don't think it's necessary.
And you're okay with that, also, Ty?
Yeah, I certainly don't want to plan for that kind of set up a scheme where we're planning to rely on that. I mean, I guess if the situation happened and we were in a bind and it was legal, I mean, whatever, I wouldn't, but yeah, I don't want to set that up as the way we're going about business.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions if I.
Go right ahead.
So I just want, this is my sense of things. I want Robin to hopefully confirm or correct me. My sense is that when we talk about this bundle of policy level requests, which are new things, a lot of them, I don't know, half of them, I feel like, are not actually, well, they're new, but they're kind of flow directly from choices we've already made, in a sense, whether it's a new software program we authorized, or things that basically would be very difficult for us to not do based on prior choices we've already made. I think I'm guessing that when we go through this, we're gonna find $2.5 million of those types of things right off the gate before we even get to something that's kind of a brand new concept.
I would agree with that. There's going to be probably at least $1 million attached to the offsite courtroom.
Right, there's an example. And what are we going to do? So anyway, I just wanted to confirm my understanding and make that point as we're considering how much of a policy level, request we're willing to kind of grant at this preliminary level. The second one is just to reconfirm what I think is my understanding is that built into this revenue and or built into this forecast is a continuation of our policy about road fund levy shift.
That's correct. At the $4.5 million shift mark.
Yeah, I mean, I want to raise that because it's not something that especially in light of our current situation, it's not something I would advocate cold turkey, but it's definitely something that I'd like to see the board plan for weaning ourselves off of, so to speak, at least over time, over a reasonable time, so that we can keep our road fund healthier. So that plays into consideration for me in terms of, these fund balances that you're showing us is assuming that we're doing nothing to correct what I consider to be a not great practice of shifting money out of our road fund.
So let's say for a moment you started to step that back in small increments, say $250,000 a year. It's a reduction in revenue and take out 500,000. And you would not decrease the expenditures, which in part are supporting not only the sheriff's office, but also parks. So making no changes in the current expenditure assumptions, but backing out a small amount of the road diversion would make the graph look like this. So that is a proposal that we can ensure is part of your deliberation come November.
Thank you. I just wanted to have that in people's minds, at least to think about, discuss.
What would happen if some of this funding request that we're getting probably is directly related to the 2% reduction that we gave them a while back?
That if it would be your prerogative to restore that. I'm sure that part of it is.
Not all.
No, not all of it, but for sure, part of it's gotta be. I mean, we'd be not thinking with a full deck if we didn't realize that.
Well, I'm on board with that incremental stepping away from borrowing.
So it's something that you can consider as you make decisions.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not asking you to make a decision about that right now.
No, it's just framing the conversation when comes November.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you looking for a number from us, whether it be a $7, $8, $9, $10 million for an ending fund balance?
So it sounds to me like you'd like to shoot for something in the $9 to $10 million range. Is that about right?
It is for me, yes.
Well, for me, it's so we can make payroll. So I don't know what that is. Is that 10% or?
10 million.
Yeah, but I mean, is that a 10% figure? Is that what gets us through payroll? 9%, 12%? I'm kind of curious about that. So we don't have to do that thing you were talking about, borrowing from other funds.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we've had in the past is if we maintain 10 million, then we get through payroll okay. I can figure out what percentage that
I mean, it's been
is.
somewhere around 10%. I just don't know exactly what it is.
Right. A 2-month balance, which would be about 18 million. We're nowhere close to that. Divided by, so
Well, I guess I'm satisfied if you're saying 10 will do it. I don't need that number right now. I'm just thinking that we ought to always strive to be able to accomplish that.
I agree, we need to at least have payroll money.
Robin, maybe,
Right.
can you hold that screen, the previous screen?
do what, Romero?
Can you go back to the table, please? I guess I'd just like to confirm with the board this assumption. And again, you're not taking a vote on this, just an assumption. So in terms of revenues, Robin already walked you through the sales tax. We're not going to revisit that. And also what Robin added is stepping down the transfer of the road levy share from the road fund, $250,000 in each year for the next 2 years. And related to the expenditures, then assuming that you may consider policy level request that will bring it up to the amount that it was reduced on the budget amendment number 4, which is $2.5 million in each year. So on that, you have in 2021 an ending fund balance of $13,670,000. I think my Superman eyes tells me 20 the end. And on the ending fund balance in 2022, you have an 8.9 million. What I heard from the board, that will be a calculated risk that you may like to take in terms of the ending fund balance for 2022. And maybe if you can, at least the board agree on this framework. And again, you're not taking a vote on this, just a framework that will be helpful.
You know, from my perspective, I haven't heard one thing yet about we'll quit shooting ourselves in the foot if we would get away from this strict regulatory roadblock that we've got in place so that our economy can flourish. We're the ones that are holding back our economy. We need to adjust that, and all we need to do is do that adjustment. And then I think we're right on target. We won't have any problem meeting exactly what you're referring to. I don't know where did you, the county manager, where did you get that? A reduction of 150,000 a year or something, did I hear you say?
It's right here.
250,000 a year from road fund?
Yeah, that's what you just discussed.
Yeah, okay. 250, I just didn't understand the number that you said.
It's 250 every year, so in 2022.
Yeah, I thought you said it was 150 there when you.
I'm sorry, 250 each year. So in 2022, obviously it's 500,000 because you carry over that 250 in 2021.
If we could well, go ahead.
Actually, I got the 250 a while back, so it makes sense to me as framework, what Romero says. But I think we should at least have enough for payroll, which is 10 million.
It sounds, I mean, I'm not sure where I'll land, but obviously we have a lot to hear, but it sounds like the board is in agreement from what I'm hearing that this, and again, forget about the road fund thing, that's a separate issue, but that this is kind of, sounds like all of our outer limits in terms of where we're going to be willing to have the 2022 fund balance land. It's got to be at or near 10 million. Sounds like we're all in agreement on that. So that, I mean, I think this framework is the right kind of starting point for discussion.
Yeah.
That helps answer the question, Romero.
And it gets you what you need, Robin.
It does.
The board says, yep, the board agrees.
I think that this framework, using the framework, puts you in a good place as you launch into hearing from every office and department what they have requested and why.
Okay.
So that is what I had for you this morning.
So before you move on, we'll make a copy of that framework and we'll replace that in your books. So you have a fresh copy as you go through the different presentations. Keep that in mind.
Oh, good.
Yep,
Good.
we'll print this out.
Okay. And what do you need now from us?
So I don't have anything else prepared for this morning. So we can break early and reconvene this afternoon at 1:30 for the presentation by, I think is it the assessor who is first up?
I believe it's the
Treasurer.
The treasurer.
Treasurer at 1:30.
Yeah, and then followed by the assessor.
Yep,
Treasurer and then assessor this afternoon?
and the auditor.
And the auditor, okay. Very good. Any final thoughts, Ty or Gary?
No, sir.
Questions? Okay.
No.
All right, well then this meeting is adjourned and we'll get back at 1:30 this afternoon for the presentations. They begin.
All right,
All right,
thank
thank
you.
you.